grew up being the smart kid and wearing that label. And
Mhm.
then you get into a place like Duke where everybody is the smart kid. You know, I leave Jess Lanier with the accomplishment of being the valedictorian, being the thing that distinguishes me. And then you get to Duke, well, everybody was the valedictorian. So what else you got? And
Hey, this is Forte, host of the Forte Effect, where technology, creativity, and work come together. Guess what? I am in the lab. Sometimes we call it the studio with Afton Taylor. I'm smiling real big because guess what? This young lady was one of my students at Jess Lanier High School, Bessemer, Alabama, class of 2008. You're talking about the young lady that earned over $1 million in scholarships. And the best valedictorian speech I've ever heard is still on YouTube. If not, I can send y'all the link. I'm going to drop it in these comments so y'all can see that too. So it is with great pleasure. And she has a lot of other titles and good things she's doing. But the best thing to me is that she was my student and I met her many, many, many years ago. And she was an inspiration to me then. And I know she's going to inspire y'all with this conversation. So welcome, Afton.
yay! Woo, 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 woo.
You're here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What have you been up to?
I've been working, trying to make sure, these allergies won't kill me.
All
Just living life, thinking
right.
about like moving closer to Atlanta. Right now, I'm in the kind of in the Atlanta metro area, the suburbs, but I would like to move closer to the city. But
Oh,
we'll about that.
all right. So, Georgia, we make sure if y'all listen to us, make sure that you drop us and show some love in comments because right now she's in this Georgia area and we don't want to forget about our great home state of Alabama. So,
Hey.
hey, Afton, over the years, let's go back to because I don't want to start with your work. I want
Okay.
to start to where it began for you because you were grounded and rooted back in the days. I first met the class of 2008 and 2005. So if we go back to your early roots in Bessemer, and we'll get into the UX stuff and the front end engineering. I know that's what a lot of people want to hear, especially my tech folks, but I want to go back to the roots because to me that's where your soul lies at. Now, when you grew up in Bessemer, what did that teach you about excellence even before you left the city?
Ooh, I think I got mixed messages regarding excellence, to be
Mm-hmm.
frank. That it was what my mom taught me and teachers who specifically like identified that I was a good student. I will often hear things from them encouraging excellence and seeing that I had the propensity to go far. I would hear one message and then I would hear sometimes them, but not necessarily them, but sometimes just like the general ethos of like society
Mm-hmm.
in Bessemer tell other students differently, kind of tampering their expectations. Or like I remember growing up, you have these like statewide assessments that happen like in the springtime. I think
Mm-hmm.
when I was coming up, it was like the SAT 9, and how it was such a big deal every single year that we everybody would do well and that we will
Mm-hmm.
make passing remarks and everything. And it was never a question that I would do well on these exams, but the fact that it was such a big deal, and like we would hear things about state takeover and the taking away of resources and all that sort of talk, and it's just like hearing the kind of the big people in life, when you're a kid, talk about this stuff, and it's just like there is because it was such a the way that they emphasized it, it was as if our brilliance was not assumed.
Mm.
That there was just such a deep concern about whether or not we would collectively get it. So it wasn't a doubt that I would personally be able to do well, but collectively there was always like a question mark. Yeah, I received mixed messages regarding excellence. Clear message towards me in terms of working hard and going towards what you wanted in life and being disciplined, but culturally it was something different. Yeah. Yeah. And I picked up on like the difference very early on.
Mm.
Yeah.
I hear it a lot too about standardized tests, but you bring up something interesting when you say collective versus what you were able to probably accomplish and people knew that you could do as an individual, but collectively, maybe there wasn't so much optimism.
Yeah.
Ah, interesting. You already starting off. Let me make sure I got enough ink in this ink pen to take notes, y'all. I got an ink pen and a Sharpie because I knew she was gonna bring it. So I'm ready tonight. About the Forte effect and the people that I'm actually talking to, these conversations will go a lot farther. Meaning, I'm going to share them with people that I know that are out here making decisions, and
Mm-hmm.
that are actually involved in the community, and even more decision makers, because this is why we're here, and this is the great part of us being human and sharing the truth. Now, let's go over to an individual achievement. We got the collective,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the class of 2008. But individually, you were the class valedictorian and
Mm-hmm.
you earned over $1 million in scholarships. What do you think you understood about opportunity that others might have missed?
Opportunity, I think what I understood then is I had been mentally preparing for that moment probably since elementary school. I was very fortunate that my mom and my father, they both met at Tuskegee. So both of them graduated from Tuskegee. So when me and my sister came along, it was always understood that after high school there would be college. We would go and visit colleges. My mama would speak lovingly about her time in Tuskegee. I mean, even to this day, she would say that that is hands down the best time in her life. Don't even get her like start skate gate, all of that. It's a lot. It's just like my chill. But yeah, so like, but I remember like in elementary school, like on the weekend, when me and my sister we were young, we would go to Miles College and my mom would work out there on the track. Just
Mhm.
that tiny bit of exposure was
Yeah.
just kind of like an assumption that I would be doing something with college in the
Yes.
name after I graduated from high school. Seeing like all the fun stuff when it came to college, seeing, my mother is an AKA. So knowing that there was a Greek life there if I wanted to participate in that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Battle of the Bands that would happen in the fall, the classic
Mm-hmm.
that would happen, teachers who would wear their alma mater's sweatshirt name.
Yeah.
All of that fed a narrative that
Mm-hmm.
I would be going to college after high, and plus like TV shows,
Mm-hmm.
Cosby Show, A Different World,
Yes.
all of that was in syndication during my youth. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just more of an assumption everywhere I turned. And so by the time we got to really, I would say junior year of high school, where it was time to like put the pedal to the metal and start doing some things to go in that direction for real. And we were very fortunate to have you and the gear up process, but also Dr. Crocker and Dr. Nelson,
Yeah.
who really tasked with giving giving the class really special attention when it came to the actual process of applying
Mm-hmm.
to colleges and really opening ourselves up to as many opportunities as possible to get to college. So by the time that, that time period came and it was time to apply and time to tour and time to just kind of see what was really out there for me, it was already a foregone conclusion for me. So it's just like, okay, it's getting around about that time. I would have been applying anyway, but because I had so much
Mm-hmm.
gas, I had so
Yep.
much fuel between Gear Up and Dr. Crocker and Dr. Nelson, then
Mm-hmm.
my own circle of friends, we're asking each other what we're doing, and so
Mm.
I think opportunity is seen by those who can spot it and who already understood that my opportunity will come. I just got to be ready and willing to go. And it's just so happy, I, I didn't choose to be born in 1990 and have my and have my graduation class year be 2008, and it just so happened that somebody somewhere made it granted us the Gear Up fund, and somebody somewhere said, hey, let's hire Dr. Crocker. Dr. Like, all of that was
Mm-hmm.
completely out of my control, but
Yeah.
what was in my control was being ready, showing up, and taking any opportunity that would have come my way to kind of help facilitate that process.
You definitely did that. And I will say, I did not know that your mother and father made it Tuskegee. Like I really, really knew y'all. And it's good when you can go in a person's house, in particular a student, and then
Mhm.
the family is welcoming and they embrace you. So thank you all for that conversation.
No, your personality and my mother's personality are actually more similar than what you think. My
Okay.
mom runs high on optimism and enthusiasm. So that's probably like the good feeling vibes that you're picking up on when you come into her presence. It's just like, my mom, I've seen her undergo a lot of things, in her
Mm-hmm.
life, and the way she is able to bounce back and just really hold fast to her
Mm-hmm.
faith and just see the silver lining in any situation is great. It's annoying at times, but it's ultimately great.
Who are you beyond any title?
You know what? That's a really good question. Um, this is gonna, oh my gosh, like y'all gonna think I'm weird when I say this. Okay, so I remember years ago when I kind of started my own personal like mental health journey.
Mm-hmm.
I There's a book that I picked up called The Untethered Soul.
Okay.
And I got it on audiobook. And within like the first couple of chapters, it asks, who are you? And he answers the question, and the way that he answered, I remember I was just, walking through the house, probably cleaning and doing
Mm-hmm.
something. And it literally like stunned me. Like I'd never heard it really phrased like that. So it's interesting that you asked me this question now, especially as I'm going through another transition.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a spiritual entity having a human experience that is called Afton's life. Now I know that's real woo woo for a lot of people. So just stay with me. In this book called The Untethered Soul, which is really good if you're someone who struggles with anxiety, rumination, being being at the behest of your own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
He describes the answer to who are you as you are the listener to what is going on in your head. You are not your thoughts, you are the listener of the thoughts. You are not your necessarily your mind, but you are the awareness. You are the invisible awareness of your mind. So, you know how, when a person passes away, your body is left here on earth. But the thing that is invisible, the thing that is ancient,
Mm-hmm.
goes on to be whatever your faith says you'll be. Christians, you say it's heaven or what have you. You go to the universe or whoever, but that invisibleness nature, that is really who you are. And
Mm.
your name, that's just the title of the invention that your parents gave you. So that was kind of the beginning of my mental health journey, of helping me to understand the difference between me, my brain, and my mind.
Mm.
And that has really transformed me to, I think, go to another level personally,
Okay.
in terms of really stepping into my womanhood in a way that I don't think anything else prior to could have done. I know that is a long, wordy, woo answer.
Yeah.
That's my answer.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, actually, that gives me something to think about. And when you said I am me, my brain, and my mind, I
Mhm.
actually meet with a group of friends, ladies. We meet once a month, and it's called a power bubble. We hold each other accountable. We discuss what we're doing, what we want to do, what we dream of doing, what we thought we were going to do and we didn't do. And sometimes we just shoot the breeze. But I think that's a conversation that you could actually help us navigate and move through
Mm,
for some reflections offline, and so that
okay.
we can channel even more of who we are as human beings. So that's the perfect human answer that you just gave, because that's what it's about. We're human beings, so going through this experience, right? that's
Yes.
that's it.
Yes.
So
It's all an experience. It's all a journey, not about the destination. It's really about, okay, in this moment, I get to experience heartbreak
mm-hmm.
and how that feels. And in
Right.
this moment, I get to experience pure elation.
Mm-hmm.
And in this moment, I get to experience frustration.
Yeah.
And it took me, a long time because I really went through a long time thinking that, if something bad happened to me, it's my fault. God was angry with me. I did something wrong. I'm bad. And that's kind of like the church folks about to be mad. So just hold on. But having so many years being indoctrinated with religion, and
Mm-hmm.
specifically a binary of good and evil. And if
Mm-hmm.
you are good, then good things will happen to you. And if you're bad, then bad things happen to you. And that just doesn't hold up. And it was driving me crazy.
Yeah.
Had me constantly in an argument with myself
Mm-hmm.
mentally, because
Mm-hmm.
bad things would happen to me.
Yeah.
You
Stuff.
run into car trouble,
Yeah.
and it's just like that has not, for
It
as
doesn't
long
make
as you
sense.
are alive and you will drive a car, you will have car trouble. That's just
Right.
what it is to have a machine. But in earlier my adulthood, I was really struggling with just being again in a constant argument with my mind, and my morality, and like you want to make choices and
Mm-hmm.
do things, but you you feel unnecessarily convicted, but yet everybody else walking around with all this freedom, and it's just like
Yeah.
you want to live your life, but then it became ridiculous. And once it became settled law in my mind that truly it will rain on the just and the unjust, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just kind of how it is with life. And just you just need to go and live your life and do the best that you can and just kind of
Mm-hmm.
save the rest. It really helped free me up and again introduce me to the next level of Afton. So a lot of the things that I kind of hear, a lot of the churchinese, that
Mm-hmm.
I hear, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other because I now know the truth. And it's just like God is not angry with me. If something bad happens to me, it's not because I forgot to pray, you
Yeah.
know, a
Yeah.
couple of mornings ago. It's
Mm.
it's it's none of that. It's literally just life.
Yeah. It's
And
just life.
unfortunately, it was just your turn to get popped.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the best thing you can do is to truly get yourself up and go on the
That's
best way
right.
you can.
Well, I'm glad you moved into another level and you've explored some of those thinkings because I do think that it is challenging because as long as I've known you, like if we had to base what happens to you, like, okay, this is a good person and she shouldn't go through anything bad. I would definitely think that would happen to you, but you're right. It is just life. I As long as I've been knowing you, I just wouldn't say you're doing a lot of bad things or you did a lot of bad things even in school. So if it was according to that thesis and that hypothesis, then nothing bad would ever happen to you. And
Right.
honestly, if we look at the world, it appears sometimes that people that we know that are probably doing really wicked stuff, they're being the most prosperous and having the most fun. And meanwhile,
Huh?
I'm trying to, yeah. So let's go ahead and go to Duke. After we leave Bessemer and we're headed to Duke, that was your college choice. You didn't go to Tuskegee. You chose Duke and you headed off to North Carolina. So you go from Bessemer to Duke. Of course, at that time, I highly recommended the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Go Blazers. You did not select UAB either. So, what did that transition feel like for you in real time? Do you remember it, or it's just been so many moons ago?
I most definitely remember it. First day on campus was August 19th, 2008.
Okay.
It was exhilarating because it's that hustle and bustle energy of all of
Mm-hmm.
these freshmen for real all around the world coming to Duke's campus, and they have all the freshmen on like one specific like sub campus. So
Mm-hmm.
all the Duke freshmen live on East Campus. So pretty much every person you run into on East Campus is a freshman. It was exhilarating, exciting, but it was also, I did not anticipate the level of, I don't even want to say sadness,
Mm-hmm.
because the sadness has a certain spirit that I wouldn't necessarily describe it as, but just kind of lost and a almost depression.
Mm-hmm.
I, as I became adjusted to like the classes and the classwork and being around people who were very different than I was and had a very different background, and also dealing with a loss of identity. So,
Mm-hmm.
for your listeners, I grew up being the smart kid and wearing that label.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into a place like Duke where everybody is the smart kid. You know, I leave Jess Lanier with the accomplishment of being the valedictorian, being the thing that distinguishes me. And then you get to Duke, well, everybody was the valedictorian. So what else you got? And also, and I can admit this is what I brought to the situation, because Jess Lanier, you essentially, again, we're cording off. If you're in advanced classes and you're in
Mm-hmm.
advanced classes from ninth through 12th grade, you're kind of cording off with the same group of students for all 4 years. And most of us understood where we were in terms of ranking in our GPA. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a natural, healthy competition, but a competition nonetheless. So I erroneously walked into Duke still with kind of like that competitor's mindset, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to switch it off.
Okay.
So I walk into Duke, and it's like, okay, they're smart, I'm smart. But when you start running into issues with class and class work, and you're not necessarily getting the high grades that you're used to getting, it's really easy to, let me speak for me. It really made for a very good pathway for doubt to enter in,
Mm-hmm.
and make it made me believe that I wasn't as dope as I actually was,
Okay.
because the one thing that I could always hang my hat on was that my grades looked a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
That was an indication of my intelligence, and my indication of intelligence was wrapped around my identity.
Yeah, right.
Well, with my being mindset, I would venture to say no, and it took me a long while and a long time of really forgiveness and breaking that apart, and
Okay.
realizing after, now that I'm 35 years old, really breaking that apart, and seeing, yeah, girl, when you think back on those conversations, those people weren't really that smart. They knew how to bullshit. They knew
Yeah.
how to talk in a way that made it seem like they were really smart.
Right.
And don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, there were some people there who were truly brilliant. I'm glad I got to know them and meet them. But there was other people who like, girl,
Mm-hmm.
ain't nothing going on up there. So yeah, it was a really difficult, challenging time. And I think if anything, I should have, they had on campus therapy. I really should
Mm-hmm.
have done that. It would
Okay.
have saved me a lot of time and energy and effort to just kind of unpack what was going on. And I probably should have taken a gap year
Mm-hmm.
after high school, because it was just a lot. Like, it was
Yeah.
literally a sprint until the very end when it came to high school. And that summer in between high school and college just wasn't enough for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was the enrollment for you back then? Do you remember how many students Duke actually had back then?
I think for our
2000?
class, it was around like 5 or 6 thousand
In one
people.
class?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So let me check this out. And yeah, it looks like the numbers are continuing to go up. So for our audience, like, because I was at school and I was talking to some students, and I'm like, I'm about to talk to one of my former students, and she graduated from Duke. And I was like, okay, let's go online, and I want you to search what's the acceptance rate for Duke. And they looked at it for the class of like 2029. The acceptance rate is like 4.8%.
Hmm.
That's, to me, that's pretty low. That's pretty low. And if you look at the diversity of the school, according to what I'm looking at right now, you have 33% Caucasian, 25% Asian, 11% Hispanic Latino, and 7% Black or African American. When I went to UAB in 1997, the percentage for Black students was around maybe 10%. So we're talking about the makeup for the class of 2029, and we're talking to Afton that started at Duke in 2008. And I bet you those numbers were probably even lower.
Hmm.
And that makes me think about a young man that went to Duke and graduated from Aliceville. He wrote an essay about studying abroad, and how when you go study abroad and sometimes you don't have the resources like your other peers that actually attend Duke, because
Hmm.
they come from different households and their socioeconomic status is a little bit different. So maybe one day I'll get you and him on here together, and we really can kind of go through and talk about his experience and your experience and where we are today. So that's pretty interesting. Now, what do you think Duke taught you that had nothing to do with academics?
Getting used to not being the smartest person in the room. How to be away from home,
Okay.
how to find a home within you, how to be around people from all backgrounds. By the time I graduated, I had, a Indian best friend who I still keep
Mm-hmm.
in touch with. How to be around Black people across the entire diaspora in
Mm-hmm.
particular. Like I remember first semester and just being it's one thing to like see Black people across the diaspora on TV. It's another thing where literally from person to person. I'm from Nigeria. I'm first
Mm-hmm.
generation Ghanaian. First generation American. My family from Ghana. I'm Jamaican. And it was just such an interesting experience because it's just like, well, I'm Black.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know,
Okay.
That's it. And they would, rock their flags on, Soca celebration day and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. And just seeing Black people who were not native to this country represent where they're from and just realizing just seeing Blackness on a global scale. That
Yes.
was the first time that I really had that in-person experience because up until that time, I grew up in Bessemer, Alabama. Everybody was from the States, was from Alabama, to be perfectly honest. So to see that and just see people of my hue come from all around the world and have a global perspective and can speak to who they are, but also speak to how not only, how do I put this? For me as a Black American woman, I often speak through my perspective of being Black,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is that comes up in your mind. But when you get somebody in the room who y'all are technically both Black, but y'all come from two different countries, they can often point out to you what's American about you
Yes. Yes.
and how that shows up and speaks to how your identity is far more complex than what even you realize.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think as Americans, we can be very, we think the world revolves around us,
Yes.
and it sometimes takes somebody who's not from here to kind of point that out in the small things that you say and do. I remember when somebody was trying to get me to watch a foreign film. And I was like, well, I don't want to be looking at subtitles for the entire movie. And I'm like, I reflect back on it and I'm just like, oh my God, that was so ignorant. And I'm sure she just looked at me just like, thankfully, like she didn't like say I was gonna be her friend anymore, but like looking at things like that, it's just like, but it's very American
Yep.
to be monolingual.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really put an emphasis on speaking other languages, but
No.
most of the world,
Yeah.
you speak multiple languages. It's not a big deal. So yeah, and it's the assumption of, Christianity being the dominant religion.
Mm-hmm.
One of my roommates in college was a Muslim, and really having an up close experience with her as someone who was a practicing Muslim, and she would take out the little rug or carpet
Mm-hmm.
that they pray on and all of that, and just seeing how she approached prayer in
Yeah.
a very different, disciplined way,
Right.
and letting that be a lesson to you.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I'm over here, slob and everything, rolling on the bed. It's just like giving God the least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
But yeah. But yeah, it's the little things like that that college really opens you up to. It's really, and this is a lesson I learned too late. It's really not necessarily about what you learn in class. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You'll
Yeah.
have moments of like eureka,
Mm-hmm.
but it's everything around it. It's really a
Yeah.
playground for adulthood before you actually become an adult. That's really
Mm-hmm.
dope and scary and beautiful and messy. That helps to kind of frame the beginning of your adulthood. And I hope that doesn't get lost as we enter into this space of like AI and kind of this narrative I see online as far as like college no longer being necessary in
Mm-hmm.
terms of that. And it's just like these babies already went through COVID. They don't
Right.
need any more opportunity to not be together and like they need human interaction.
That's right.
Cause when
Yeah.
you walk up to some of them, it's like a ghost. Nobody's there.
That's right.
So please, if you can, if it's feasible, go to college. It is so much. Yes, it's gonna push you academically, but it's also going to push you way more than that, especially if you live on campus and you really get into the social aspect.
Yeah. I stayed on campus the whole time at UAB, and UAB has a large percentage of international students. At one time, we used to have an international house on campus, and you could go and celebrate with other ethnic groups and cultural celebrations, which was really, pretty eye opening. And I will say, when you spoke on the language piece here in America, let me tell y'all a little secret. When I interview, when they ask you what is an area of weakness, I always talk about me not being bilingual. So if you're looking for that perfect answer, what is an area of weakness or something that you need to work on, you could always talk about those languages if you're
I
not.
love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
Yeah,
That is a
yeah.
good.
I mean, if you are, you got it. But if not, that's normally my kind of go-to with how I respond, to that one. Now, I know that when you were at Justin there, you were very voiceful. Did you ever really find your voice and it evolve at Duke, or did it kind of take you a while to get grounded in that environment? Like what happened there?
Um, I'm sure others would disagree,
Uh huh.
but I feel like I didn't necessarily find my voice at
Okay.
Duke. I
Okay.
feel like even on the day of graduation, there was like a question mark of, you know, yeah, you know, if I could evaluate like my time there, it's just so much of it was like a question mark, and like I'm not sure if I did it as good as I could have done it.
Right.
I look back on some of the choices I made, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, girl, what was you thinking?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it really is, unless you're like you have a life in academia or
Mm-hmm.
you get like connected to like the UN or something, it is kind of
Mm-hmm.
the last time you will be have such a close have such close proximity to such a wealth of resources and knowledge that I mean it's technically not for free. You are paying for it,
Right.
but it's such a wealth of knowledge and resources and books and libraries and research papers and
Mm-hmm.
professors and
Mm-hmm.
just people who are really, are either in the top of their field or, they know somebody who's in the top of their field, being around other students who are just as smart as you are and you are up at 3 o'clock in the morning going back and forth about, I mean, and for God's sakes, my freshman year was 2008. If there was ever a time to be on campus around a bunch of smart black people, it was that year.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just the with the election of the first black president and just all of that, like it was just electric.
I can
And
imagine.
just such a special, special time to be in college during the first Obama administration. And I don't even know what the question is, but yeah.
What you
Oh,
saying?
did it evolve? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What it evolved
Okay.
into, I don't know.
To to be continued. I'll think about it. I'll let you
Right,
know.
right. It's very much a question mark.
You know what? That's when you know you had a good college experience. I'm serious.
Okay, I did
I
it
mean,
right. Yeah,
yeah, I'm telling you, hey, that sounds like me at UAB was a blur.
okay. And maybe this is me watching too much of different world or whatnot, but there was
Yeah.
such a, I guess I was expecting a very clear, concise arc as I saw with the characters on a different world.
Hmm.
Dwayne Wayne was this scrawny, smart
Hmm.
mathematician, and he
Yeah.
evolved into, being a professor and then
Yeah.
going on to, I think, working Okinawa or
Yeah.
whatever that software company was.
Hmm.
And Whitley was this like rich, spoiled,
Yeah.
bratty, came from wealth, and she evolved into someone who was a little bit more intuitive and cared more about the people around her and really value community.
Yeah.
I was expecting more of that. I didn't get that.
No.
I was confused the day of my graduation about how am I supposed to make this thing work?
Well, you know what? That's interesting because and this is actually a joke. Now, if we have some younger people that are listening to this and parents, let me okay, so if you are a parent and you have a child now that's going to college. Now, Afton probably showed her family her grades, but guess what? I went to UAB the whole time. My family, they never saw my grades because I probably knew I could be doing more. And when I got ready for graduation, my mother was like, "Why do you want to show me your grades now?" So it was everything was all a blur, but it was when you go to a larger university, it's so many different things going on around you and the pathways and the options and the opportunities and where do I want to find my voice? I will say that I was in ROTC at UAB, and that's all about leadership. Now, in 2019, I actually earned being the UAB Volunteer of the Year. So I do think it can be later in life that other things open up and evolve, and it might not seem to be what you think it is right now, but you're going to surprise yourself one day. And this is probably just the start of it. I believe in you. Great stuff happened there. And I know some other fellow Duke graduates that I'm going to introduce you to, and who knows where they can kind of grow. So we're going to move from Duke, and I'm sure people might have seen that when they see this thumbnail, they're going to want to know how did you get into technology? So let's pivot a little bit. We're not going to talk about me and my Commodore 64. So you didn't follow a traditional path into tech. What made you even think that you could step into that space? Like, how did you end up there?
I was broke. Uh,
Okay.
it was 2015.
Mm-hmm.
That winter, that like January, February, I had went out to New York to audition for MFA programs for acting.
Okay.
And at Yale School of Drama, Juilliard, NYU, like all the biggies. And I did well, but not well enough to get accepted.
Okay.
And when the Juilliard rejection came, that was the final one out of the four or so schools that I applied. I was just like, no, I can't. And at the time, I was working at the Regions CDIRA contact center. I was just like, this cannot be my life. I can't,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just it that felt like a closing door once I got like the final, no, we won't be accepting you. And yeah, so I was literally at my desk at work, and I heard the words out of somewhere, learn to code.
Yeah.
So I just type in Google learn to code, and I come across articles and stories of people who, I was a waiter and then I did this tech boot camp and now
Mm-hmm.
I'm making X amount of dollars. Taught myself how to learn the code. Now I'm making more money than I've ever made before. So I was like, okay, okay. I don't think I have the discipline or the stamina to teach myself. But what about these boot camps, right? And I was
Mm-hmm.
nervous because it's just like I had, just a couple of years out of school. I did have some student loan debt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, do I really want to take on something that would put me into more debt? And I would look up the boot camps. Most of them were like either in New York or San Francisco, and they were expensive, like 5 figures for a few weeks of schooling, of teaching. So I was just like, So I was like, well, something tells me, well, type in, Tech Birmingham. Turns out there was an actual organization called Tech Birmingham, and they were about to start their front end engineering boot camp within a few weeks.
Oh wow.
And it was only for $5,500.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like, let me go for it just to see because I gotta make some option. I gotta make something shake, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I applied, I got in, I quit my job, and I started the day after Labor Day of that year. My mom was completely supportive. I living with my mom throughout this entire time. So my mom was very, very supportive. She literally said to me, after your life is not gonna get any less complicated than what it is right now. I was
Right.
24. Let's see, that was in by 25 was when I was in the boot camp. It was 9 weeks.
Oh.
Very, very hard because they were teaching you the fundamentals of front end engineering in 9 weeks. And that's not something that you can really fully grasp in 9 weeks. And I didn't really know that going in.
Mm-hmm.
So what made it so difficult was just being really, really hard on myself of thinking that, oh, I'm going to get everything and not understanding everything because they would literally go from one subject to the next, from day to day to day to day. And again, I graduated from that program after 9 weeks. That would like put me in November. And I'm just like, I still don't know what I think I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, and now I'm supposed to like go out into the workforce, into the job market and try to get a job. And it was just such a hard and confusing time. I'm applying and the people were saying, we'll help you, but the help ain't really helping
Right.
in terms of getting a job. And I also knew like I don't want to stay in Alabama and just like I want to go somewhere else. I'm applying for things in Georgia and I still have like acting dreams in my heart. So that would make
Mm-hmm.
sense because that's the time where like Georgia's really starting to pop off with entertainment, arts and entertainment. So I'm applying for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I'm getting, some interviews, but it's interviewing is a skill all in itself.
Right.
And it's really not until April of the fall of 2016 where I interviewed for UPS for a web development position. And I do a couple of interviews and I have to drive out here, from Birmingham, Bessemer area, all the way out here to the Atlanta, Alpharetta area,
Okay.
and meet with people and do a tech interview and that sort of thing. And I finally, in May, get my first big tech job as a
Oh
web
wow.
developer.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how I got in, and when I tell that story now,
Mm-hmm.
I always try to like tell people, give them as much information as possible
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what I was feeling, what my mind was like,
Yep.
because it's not a straight line.
Yeah.
There were a lot of days within like that 6 months of like graduating and then finally getting a job where I felt like I would not get anything that like I
Yeah.
had made another mistake, you know. and I didn't necessarily know how to ask for help, and like I didn't know
Hmm.
like could I go back to the people at the boot camp and like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not really finding. I just didn't know, but
Right.
it worked out. But
It worked out.
it stressed me out though. So
It
yeah,
stressed you out. So,
yeah.
I'm hearing some women who code. I don't know if you're involved with that organization or not, but Miss Forte, Instructor Forte, she's all about networking and resources. And as you grow further and evolve in your career, I want to make sure whatever opportunities that you should be exposed to and your network is just as wide as what you actually deserve. So I heard women who code. And when you say Tech Birmingham for our audience, because we have a large audience, right here in the Birmingham area, Birmingham metro area, all throughout Alabama, and we're going across the globe. So is that Tech Birmingham like in Birmingham, Alabama?
Yes, Tech Birmingham. It's an actual organization called Tech Birmingham, techbirmingham.com. And
Okay.
the last time I was there, like they had like an actual office building in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm not sure because again, it's been close to 10 years since I've, really interacted with them. But Tech Birmingham is the organization held a boot camp course there.
Oh, that is perfect. So for those of you all that are listening, if you know Tech Birmingham, and I know a lot of you all do, so you probably typing and texting Dion right now. He is our technology guy in Birmingham, Alabama. And Dion, I'm gonna reach out to you too. We need to get Afton back. She probably needs to be at Sloss Tech that is happening real soon, or if you haven't been to it locally, she needs to come back and share her story because she's a product of Tech Birmingham. And when we think about the future of work and how we're actually growing, evolving, we need voices that what she's sharing, how she's grown, because people need to see it, and we need faces that look like hers too. So there's a lot of love that I have for the city of Birmingham and how I've actually grown for the technical field and for Dion. So make sure that y'all send this to Dion, and I'm gonna send it to him too, because whatever this young lady needs from going through that class, she needs to have it. Now, my little joke, I took a coding class too, and I barely can write hello world, but that's not about me right now. Okay. We're not talking about me and my coding skills. We're going to help her leverage her resources and what's out here as a young heart being able to influence others. Now, during that transition, how did you even know that you were good enough to compete? Because had you taken any computer science classes or even at Duke? Had you taken any like computer science classes?
No, I mean I grew up with a computer in the house,
Hmm.
but growing up with a computer in the house is different from engineering. I didn't know. I mean, I
Hmm.
remember like the test assignment that they
Yeah.
gave us to get into the boot camp course, and I mean the only reason why it was really difficult was because you had to do it in such a small amount of time. But I knew if I
Okay.
had more time, it would be even better. But the fact that they accepted me meant that I was at least good enough. And I
Hmm.
had read enough articles that whatever it was to be called a developer or engineer, if it could be taught in 9 weeks, it couldn't be so impossible.
Okay.
As far as like thinking you're good enough to compete or whatnot, I really don't take that approach. Ever since like the kerfuffle that was high school, bringing that into college, as far as like competing and stuff, I have
Hmm.
really tried to detach myself from thinking about other people and what they're doing and what they're bringing to the table. I
Okay.
really just trying to think about how can I improve? What is it that I didn't know yesterday that I can know today? And that's it. But and I recommend that to everybody else. Like if you're just starting out in this field, or even if you've been in it for as long as I have, there is no competition. The only thing you need to be focused on is executing your job to the best of your ability. Everything else other than that is really of no concern of yours, because once you get in the job, you realize why there is a team
Mm-hmm.
of engineers because everybody knows a little slice that's different than yours. Your slice may be pepperoni pizza, their slice may be cheese, the other
Mm-hmm.
person's slice may be margarita. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody's pizza is it has a different flavor to it, and you just need to be focusing on executing yours to the best of your ability.
Good. And that probably reduces imposter syndrome, and that probably could lead to a whole nother conversation because I had never really heard that phrase until a few years ago, and somebody used it in the workplace. We go put a pin in that one for now. But as we go further into how you evolved, now you're a senior front end and UX engineer. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Like I see it. Tell us, explain, like break it down.
Okay. A front end UX engineer is basically a person who helps develop the user interface and the user experience of a particular digital product, whether that's a website or a application or something of that sort. Now, what do I mean by user interface? When you go on, let's say YouTube or Zoom, you are clicking on and interacting with buttons and icons and text and everything that you see as a user on the actual interface on
Mm-hmm.
if you think about building a house, you know you are in front of a house when you see windows and a door and stairs and bricks and siding and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you are the one that is putting the outside of the house together. You're also making sure that the basic interactivity is working. So when you go to the door of your house, there's a doorknob there, and that doorknob has machinations that helps remove the lock, turn the lock out from the away from the door so that way you can actually walk in. That is essentially what a front end engineering is doing, is making sure that everything that the user actually interacts with is
Mm-hmm.
there and it is servicing the user. That's a big roundabout way. And we use coding languages to do that. The most basic common front end languages are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, there are frameworks and libraries available that helps kind of bundle that and make it easier to work with web application or mobile application, but essentially everybody is working with some form of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Okay. So let me add a little irony here. So if I happen to be like on my cell phone and I'm trying to find something and
Mhm,
I'm on my favorite, web, I'm playing around on the web.
mhm.
If something doesn't load right, I probably could blame a person with your title if I wanted to point my finger at somebody. Yeah, it's you. It's your title.
Well, it's not necessarily a single person,
Okay, it's a
but
team. It's a slice, right? It's a slice.
it's a team, but it's also something that may not necessarily be anybody's one person's fault
Okay,
because
okay,
when
got
you're
it.
building software, we're not building it to just kind of exist in nature.
Mm-hmm.
You are pulling up your iPhone, your Android, you're pulling up Google Chrome, Safari, Edge, whatever browser that you use. And those browsers have their own software. And just like you have to update your phone every now and again to get the latest
Mm-hmm.
software, sometimes these browsers, these phones update, and now we have to scramble and update what we have now to be in alignment with what these browsers and phones and whatnot have. And sometimes there is that delay can show up as bug fixes that we
Okay.
have to do and upload to you so that way you can go on and continue to have a good user experience. And sometimes it's about you run into issues where the website is just taking so long to load.
Right.
It could be that a developer uploaded something to the website and it ended up causing more issues than what we knew
Mm-hmm.
would cause. and it's, some things are not found out until it's in production, when it's out in the world. Now it's
Okay.
embarrassing. If you remember, I think it was last year, there was a big security issue that happened with Microsoft and ended up shutting down like all of Microsoft related software issues, and
Mm-hmm.
like planes couldn't fly, and it was just this big, hubbub.
Mm-hmm.
It
Right.
turns out it was a little small bug issue, and it caused really major expensive damage,
Right.
because Microsoft is everywhere. It's
Mm-hmm.
used all around the world. So when people uploaded it, and I remember even as a developer for myself using a Windows computer, I couldn't access my own computer because of this issue, and I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
even do my own work. So yeah, it's a constant conversation of adjusting to what other APIs are doing, application
Mm-hmm.
programming interfaces are doing, what other browsers and phones are doing, and also making sure that we're not creating more issues for ourselves when we make new developments within our own digital product.
Got it. Now, so I checked out your LinkedIn before I was getting ready to talk to you. And on there it's listed, you build experiences used by millions. What does that mean to somebody that doesn't understand things in technology?
So what that means is the projects that I've had the opportunity to work on, whether it's with UPS, most recently Newer Rubbermaid, they have literally been used and accessed by millions of people all around the world, which means that what I've helped to create was scalable, sustainable, and maintainable enough to deal with um, the myriad of users that may access your product. It's one thing to build it for a few people, but what happens when a million people access your website, for example, at the same time? How
Mm-hmm.
does that performance show up? Can it hold up? Um, it's one thing for your, let's say you're working on a web page. Everything looks good, but then somebody in China accesses it, somebody in Russia accesses it, and the language flips. Does the design break? That's things
Mm-hmm.
that I have to think about as a developer, as an engineer, making sure that it's not only good in English, but it's good in any language you put it in. It's one thing for your website to have a great experience as people who are not blind, but if somebody who was colorblind were to access it, if somebody who was hard of hearing, not hard of hearing, if somebody who used a screen reader, or somebody who has keyboard accessibility only, would they still have an effective, sustainable experience than somebody who didn't need all those things to use your website? So when we think about the front end, it's not only just about making sure that the website looks pretty, it's making sure that your website is accessible by everyone. It's making
Yes.
sure that it is responsive, meaning that whether I have it on the biggest monitor or whether I have it on my iPhone, I still have a great user experience. Whether I am looking at it in English or I'm looking at it in German, I still have a great experience as a user. And this is important to businesses because obviously, if you're on the World Wide Web, you want as many customers as to access you want access to as many customers as you possibly can. And particularly with the accessibility piece,
Mm-hmm.
because we live in the United States and we have the ADA, it is not only in the business's best interest to, from a customer angle, to make sure their products are accessible, but you can get sued if your
Mm-hmm.
website is not accessible. Google will penalize you. If your website is not accessible, it will push you down further in the search results if your website is not accessible. So it is things like that that teams depend on me, because it's more than just, oh, make this button blue and the text white. I have to go behind and then listen to the web page that I may have been working on with the screen reader and making sure it's telling the same story that I wanted to tell. I have to test out different languages and check to see is anything breaking. Is the text wrapping the way that I want it to?
Mm-hmm.
Are going behind and checking to see, okay, this looks good in 1440 pixels. Okay, let me get a mock iPad. Does it still look good? Okay, let me get a mock iPhone. Does it still look good? And also
Mm-hmm.
keep in mind, this is 2026. Several iPhones have been released out into the market and they all have slightly different sizes. So checking all the sizes, making sure that nothing is breaking.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So Afton has just taken us kind of through what it looks like when you're designing something, when it's accessible. She's taught us about building to scale. And so let me go back to something that's probably basic that people hear. I'm going to learn how to code. What's the difference with learning how to code? Because you saw that flyer from Tech Birmingham and someone who builds at your level. How did you learn? Did you learn how to code at the same time? Or how do you build up to being a front end engineer? How does that happen? What was your sequence?
So the boot camp taught front end coding.
Okay.
It really wasn't until my first job at UPS where I
Okay.
really got a fuller understanding about what it means to be an engineer.
Okay.
We did not cover accessibility in the boot camp.
Okay.
We kind of touched on responsiveness, but not a whole lot. There's no time to like teach the full
Right.
breadth. I'm 10
Yeah.
years in and there's still new things that I'm finding out
Hmm.
about engineering and specifically front end engineering. Good UI architecture, good how to structure your files in your web app so that way for the developers coming behind you, they are able to quickly identify where something is. They're not, squandering time trying to figure out where a particular file or something is. Understanding different design strategies. You may come across a website and it may be slow because the developer who coded it had it so that way all the images are being loaded all at once, and images are a very heavy, they take up a lot of space. Now, if they had a smarter engineer or engineer who are aware of certain practices when it came to images or videos, they would implement something called lazy loading, where and you may have seen this if you are on the internet, where your website opens up, just it renders just fine, and then you may get to the end of like the scroll, and then you see like a little loading icon and then you
Hmm.
see more populate. Yeah, that's a design strategy, because if they were to load in all the images, all the
Hmm.
YouTube videos, all the TikToks, all the Instagram posts, your phone would be loading forever. You'll never be able to really experience the app. But by loading in just a small portion at a time, it allows you to experience the app in a more sustainable way without crashing it. So yeah, but it's the boot camp taught me really the fundamentals of coding,
Okay.
the basic fundamentals. But if you're listening to this, it's really not going to be until you get into your first job where you're working on a team with a team and you see how your job as a coder fits into this whole wheel of what it means to put an app out there. Now, we are in, and there are people who are building apps
Hmm.
using AI,
Hmm.
which I'm completely fine with. But I would still say if you're only using these tools, these AI tools to get the app out there, and you're not necessarily using it to learn and understand the principles behind it, you're doing yourself a disservice. And it's going to show once you get into a real live working environment. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of taking us to AI and what the future looks like, but I appreciate you for talking about accessibility because in particular with my time when I was with Microsoft Teals as a contractor, accessibility was big all across Microsoft.
Yeah, because they don't want
I
to get sued.
Yeah, even with our color palettes, the softwares that we used, emojis,
Mhm.
it was interesting all the tools that were made available for us, and then also for us to think about when we actually interface with people. And that is something that even smaller companies can think about. If you have an employee that needs a keyboard with a different layout for accessibility dealing with their vision, you know, you should think about it. I mean, it's so many different ways that we can meet people where they are in the workspace. It doesn't have to be a lot of money being invested, but you should try to make some of those tools available for them. Or if they submit a purchase request for something that seems small to you and you don't understand it, don't make them go through a lot of text. I mean, the ADA is there and it actually backs them up with that. So, Afton, I appreciate you for bringing it to the forefront even more so in this conversation than what I would even think that you understood. But you're spot on with it. So, as we start to think about AI in the future, you spoke on it a little bit, but what do you think people might be getting maybe wrong with AI in their tech careers? Because I've heard of vibe coding. I don't know if you've looked at vibe coding or not. And I'm like, hey, you know, I probably could work with any software that's coding for me because remember, I can barely write hello world. I'm a Commodore 64 girl. So how do you what do you think is happening here with the AI and some of the tech careers?
I think what will specifically happen with my line of work eventually is that the role of UI designer and front end engineer will eventually collapse into one. So if you're a designer only, you will probably be expected to learn how to code more and more and more and more. And if you are a front end engineer, you will probably be expected to learn how to design more and more and more and more. I think eventually, for everyone who calls themselves an engineer, your job will become less and less about coding and become more and more about managing agents who will code for you.
Okay.
I think the days of me coding by hand are pretty much gone. When I go on interviews, when I interface with other people, particularly people who are in a hiring position,
Mm-hmm.
they are expecting you to have some experience with Claude and Cursor and all these other kind of coding
Mm-hmm.
tools. It works too well and too quickly for them to not use it.
Yeah.
I think it behooves you to understand system design, which is how is it that your role fits into the overall machinations of a website or whatever application you're working on. And now, don't get me wrong, particularly if you're in an interviewing space right now, still code just to, because still continue to code just to keep your skills sharp
Mm.
because they do want to see that you are not fully reliant on the tools, even though who knows what they'll do a year from now if you find
Right.
yourself on the job market then. I think it's also say this. I think it's still important for people to know how to code without the tools because
Mm-hmm.
just like with any tool, it can fail you.
I see.
And these tools are relatively inexpensive now. I do not expect them to stay inexpensive for long. I
Mm-hmm.
expect because capitalism gonna capitalize. I expect these tools to become more and more expensive, and I expect them to really want to cash in as we become more dependent on it. So you may be in a situation where you're at work and the budget is the budget, And if you're using Claude and you come to the end of Claude, your Claude token budget, and you still got work to do, you
Yeah.
still need to figure out how to get on Google and how to get on Stack Overflow and figure out how to solve the problem. So don't let go of all of what you know just for the shiny, bright new tools. Still stay sharp in coding, but just understand that AI is here and it is impacting how we work. Your duty to know and be sharp.
Okay. That that makes sense. So I want to go and kind of start to bring it home for some people because I know as a student you were very voiceful back in the day. So I can imagine you now that you are an adult and you're functioning on your own, and particularly in spaces like tech. So, how has your voice shown up for you in your career? How have you had to use your voice?
If I'm being honest,
Hmm.
I think I've struggled with
Okay.
finding my voice. I got into this line of work because I was tired of being broke.
Okay.
And I came through the back door and
Yeah.
I wasn't sure of all of what I knew.
Hmm.
And while I did have a really great first team at
Yeah.
UPS,
Hmm.
every team I've had after that has not been as great as them and as educational as them.
Hmm.
So sometimes when I hear other developers speak and when I see their code and it's just like it's so complex and it kind of reifies that little voice in the back of your head like you don't know all of it. You're gonna get found out. You
Hmm.
don't know all of what you think you know.
Hmm.
It's just it has unfortunately, and I can see how it has held me back. It has kept me quiet. And
Yeah.
literally this year I have made a deal with myself where I was going to be using my voice more often and being more vocal and being more visible.
Okay. All right. And
So yeah.
yeah, that's interesting to hear. And what I will say, there are some other resources that I'll actually share with you offline. I've participated in a number of those, and I'm sure some of those groups would be able to kind of help you with that. And I will say that it's actually not uncommon. Most people that are involved in technology are more on the introverted side, not so much as an extrovert anyway. So they're naturally quiet and shy by nature. So because in the beginning of our conversation, I wrote down, you said the word collective.
Mm-hmm.
And there is strength. There is strength in unity. And it's another phrase called collective efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing the collective all my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm happy to share some other things with you that can support you even more in your journey, and that's for real. And I'll follow up with you, offline. So as we think about real talk, or like trying to break into tech, for somebody that's watching or listening and thinking right now, I could never do that. What would you tell them? What would you tell them? Dig deep down, and what would you tell them?
Well, if you're beginning with I could never do that, then you're right.
Mm.
And if you're someone where I think I could do that, well, you're right. So whether you can or you can't, it's really about what you tell yourself. Now, some of us was just so desperate and broke that we was just gonna go for it anyway.
Yeah.
But I have had really a beautiful experience because when I tell my story and then my family tells my story to people out in the world and it inspires them
Yep.
and then they come back, my family comes back like, girl, you remember I told so and so about your tech and everything. Well, child, they did a boot camp and now they got a job and they making such and such money. And I'm just like, but wait a minute, and that's more than what I make.
Exactly. Put me on.
What? But one of the cool things about this experience of the past 10 years is hearing people who are several degrees away from me, people who I have not even met, who have
Right.
been inspired by my story. And just like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna do it. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta make something shake.
Yep.
So ultimately, your mindset is everything. It
Yeah.
Go ahead and make peace with the fact of knowing that it will not be easy, but also make peace with the fact that you can do hard things.
Right.
You can,
Yeah.
I have a mantra that says life is tough, but so is you.
Mm-hmm.
And the struggle is real, but so is God.
Yeah.
So make up in your mind, okay, I'm about to undergo something that is going to be difficult, that's going to be challenging, but I can do it. I can stick to it.
Yeah.
And the benefits that's going to be on the other end of this will be worth it. So, yeah, whether you can or you can't, it's really up to you. It was people who had heard my story who had flipped that thing so right that they was
Yeah.
making more than what I was making,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just if you really want to go for it, then go for it. And I think another question you should ask yourself is, how do you best learn? There are some
Mm-hmm.
people who can really do this thing fully independently. Like they can get on Google, type in front end engineering course, and just go from there. And there are other people who do need the boot camp experience. Now they may be
Mm-hmm.
able to do like an online boot camp. And there's some people who's like, no, I need somebody in my face teaching me how
Right.
to pull up Hello World. So, be real with yourself as far as like how does your brain really activate when it comes to learning? And then that will help guide you in terms of what process you should go with in terms of getting the fundamentals.
Yes. Now, as we look at your legacy and we think about your responsibility being from Bessemer, what would you say to your younger self right now in Bessemer? What would you tell the younger Afton?
Hmm. I would tell her, number one, seek help sooner. I developed unintentionally a bad habit of doing things myself. And because they worked out, that whole powering through mentality worked out for the first 18 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I went into college with that mindset, and I drowned unnecessarily a lot through college and a lot through my 20s as well. It really wasn't until my late 20s when I began to figure out, oh yeah, I'm actually not supposed to be doing this life thing by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Even now I'm trying to like I'm really considering like I have yet to have like a mentor this
Mm.
this whole time, you know? And it's just
Yeah.
like how much of my experience could have been easier if I had somebody to kind of tap me on the shoulder, just like, okay, what is the easier way of doing this? How can I
Right.
climb this mountain and not start
Mm-hmm.
from scratch every single time?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really want to spend this year finding mentors and coaches to help really not only just with my tech journey, but just also with like some things outside of tech, really expanding like my personal brand. There are some
Yep.
other dreams that I have that I want to get off the ground. And I remember when I first started therapy almost 5 years ago, I remember telling my therapist, the tools that I have that I've gotten up until this point, I know it's not going to be able to take me to the next level. So I
Okay.
want to get some new tools. And
Yep.
now when it comes to like coaching and mentorship, I'm kind of at that same transitional point. The tools that I have now, they got me to where I am right now, but it's not going to get me to where I can scale your
Yep.
word to the next level. So, but yeah, so seek help sooner, take a gap year from high school.
Okay.
to college. My mom was a big proponent of, again, high school, college. And I don't think that's
Mm-hmm.
necessarily a bad thing, but I really could have benefited from a break in that particular period. And I think my mom was just she came up of a time where if you didn't go to the military or to college right after high school, you were either going to get pregnant or end up on drugs. Now, I think it's
Yeah.
safe to say I would have not gotten pregnant or ended up on drugs. That's just not even
Right.
in my
Right.
purview, but I could have stood a break.
Right. Yeah.
Another thing is most of the advice given is not even for you. I heard
Mm-hmm.
so many like toxic things. Not again, not necessarily told to me, but
Yeah.
just said from grown-ups to us as children. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it didn't feel right then. And now that
Yeah.
I'm an adult, I know it's not right now. So yeah, I but as a child, you soak up everything and you internalize everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that takes me to my next one, take nothing personally.
Yeah.
Really try to learn how to be something slick when it comes to people's actions, just let it
Mm-hmm.
roll right off of you.
Yeah.
Because the things that people do and say, it really has nothing to do with you. Even when it does seem like it has something to do with you, we're all living through our own projections. It's really like even if I trigger you in a certain way, the trigger is yours. It exists within your own mind. And that doesn't fully take responsibility away from me. But at the end of the day, we're all responsible for how we respond to things. And we can make that adjustment in terms of how we choose to respond differently. I think lastly, go to therapy.
Yeah.
That would be my last piece of advice
Go
to
to
my younger
therapy.
self.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go back to one thing that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and in particular, I
I'm gonna
want to
turn
give.
the light on just a little bit because it's getting dark out here.
All
So
right, and that means we're about to be wrapping it up, y'all. So you made mention of the mentor. I had a former supervisor, and he actually encouraged me and my colleagues to have like a board of the same way a nonprofit has a board of directors. You
mhm.
actually have a board of advisors that help you in a lot of different areas. I just wanted to give him a kudos for that. Now, one other thing, as I think about it, do you feel you have a responsibility to reach back and help others for opportunities, or how do you balance that out, reaching back? Because a lot of us pour so much into others that
Mhm.
we sometimes suffer along the way. What's your viewpoint on that?
I try to be very like when asked, I try to be as very open and
Mm-hmm.
almost like a water fountain with my experience and what worked for me, what didn't work for me, the blessings or whatnot that
Mm-hmm.
I had. Like I'm very upfront with like in my 20s, like my mom gave me her old car. I have yet to have a car note. Some people may, well, how do you connect that to your success? The fact that I'm not paying $300 to $500 a month, if not more, and
Yeah.
have not been so for the first decade and a half of my adult life is something. Okay. That
Yeah.
means that I have more latitude to
Mm-hmm.
invest. That means
Yeah.
I have more latitude to get an apartment that I really, really like,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's things like that where it affects your decision making in terms of what you are coming into adulthood with. In terms of like, I guess a more formalized way of like giving back, I and my sister and I, we talk about this all the time, but there are so many things when it comes to adulting that we feel
Mm-hmm.
like we didn't get or we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And you typically find out at the worst possible moment. It's just like You don't know what your insurance really covers until you're
Mm-hmm.
in a situation where
Mm-hmm.
you now have to like dig deep into,
Yeah.
into the policy, and you figure out, oh, that one thing that you
Mm-hmm.
have your insurance actually doesn't cover. But yeah, just things like that where I would like to, and I don't know how it could come about, but I remember growing up we had the girls club off on, it used to be like across the street from where the old Davis Middle School was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an opportunity. It was, I'm not sure, was it used throughout the school year? Oh, I remember going to it
Mm-hmm.
during the summertime. And
Okay.
we learned how to swim, we learned how to sew, we learned how to
Mm-hmm.
cook. I would like to create something like that that's deeply community based,
Mm-hmm.
that includes some of those same things, like knowing how to cook, knowing how to sew, that sort of thing, but also knowing about personal finance, credit scores,
Mm-hmm.
investing, 401k,
Yeah.
IRA,
Yeah.
or how to interview.
Yeah.
Learning, you like in therapy, if you ever been to therapy, you a lot of therapists give out like the emotion wheel, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like all of these different feelings that we see: happy, sad, resentful, jealous,
Yeah.
envy, that sort of thing. Giving people language on how to be an adult, from the physical all the way up unto the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
This girl, was flirting with my man the first time, and we got into an argument. This second time, you know what? I'm gonna look at him. It's like, do I want to be with somebody who will allow me to play, to play in my
Mm-hmm.
face like that? I'm gonna make a different choice, and I'm gonna choose me, and
Right.
just and just make a different choice about how we deal with ourselves, how we deal with other people, how we deal with our finances, how we deal with people on the job, just things like this, like a girls club that's like elevated, getting people with
Yep.
different kinds of careers coming in,
Mm-hmm.
exposure,
Yep.
eventually getting it so that way we can go overseas and travel, that sort of thing, knowing that the world is much bigger than Bessemer.
It is. It is. Now, when people hear your story, what do you want them to take away from it?
That I left nothing on the table, that I did it all, like fulfill every curiosity. I died with no potential on the inside of me. That
That
is what?
that is serious and significant. Died with no potential left on the inside of you. And I don't know if you've ever heard where the richest place is. And it has been said that it's the graveyard.
Mm,
Because in a graveyard, you're gonna have so many people that are buried with potential. And it was never
realize.
unleashed. It,
Yeah.
it it never came to fruition. And for you to say that, that's why you were that student making the announcement at Just Lanier. That's why you happen to be born in 1990 and in the Gear Up cohort of 2008. That's why I came into y'all's lives in 10th grade and y'all started preparing for college in 7th grade. Kudos for the Gear Up program with the after school tutoring and just how it evolved over the years, and even my commitment to the class of 2008, that I'm going to be here with you all for life. And I really do mean that. So with that being said, before you answer our final question of the night, and I'll go ahead and give that to you, what is the Forte effect? What does that mean to you? Is there anything that we might have missed? Any experience? I know offline you talked about earlier what school was, or how things could have been different maybe for some other students. Is there anything that you feel like we missed or you want to highlight before we go into the final, the grand finale Like how you used to do them announcements
I
at just in their high school.
I feel like we really did a good job of covering a lot. I think and this probably needs to be like its own podcast, but I
Mm-hmm.
just want to make sure to whoever is listening, whether you were, I don't know, in the smart people clique or not,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
from somebody who was in the smart people clique, we understood that there was a difference, but not in the way that you may think that I'm referring to. Because I was identified as someone at an early age, and I mean like kindergarten, first, second,
Mm.
as someone who was very responsive to the current school environment and how things were taught, it created a feedback loop. So in that feedback loop, a positive feedback loop, and that it just I did well, the teachers were happy. I got stuff, so I did well again. The teachers were happy. I got stuff. I did well. The teachers were like, it became a thing. I got trophies. So it became a
Mm-hmm.
positive feedback loop. So it may look to you, person who were in like general classes or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that I was so much smarter than you. I
Yeah.
guarantee you, I'm not that much smarter than you. What
Mm-hmm.
happened was at an early age, I did well in front of the right person, and it created a feedback loop to me, and it allowed people to give me resources that only encouraged me even more. And that's how we get a level of unfairness or inequity among different groups of students.
Mm-hmm.
But I promise you, there are people who didn't even finish high school who I know are brilliant. There are people who I know in our class, and I'm not going to say their names out of respect,
Right.
who I know did very well on the ACT,
Mm-hmm.
particularly did better than I did on the
Mm-hmm.
math and science portions of the ACT. But when it came to the final portion, which I believe was the reading, they just got bored.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just put their head down, and that affected their overall ACT score.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a difference of intelligence. That is getting used to being in a testing environment,
Right.
you know? But that doesn't mean that they don't know the work. That doesn't mean that they can't do the work.
Right.
But so and as somebody who has been to one of the most private elite institutions in the world,
Mm-hmm.
trust me when I tell you, those people are not smarter than you. It may be just a few. And trust me, I identified the few. They are in my phone right now. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those people, they just so happen to have resources. They just
Right.
so happen to have access. But as far as capability, you got it. So do not allow labels either then or now to deter you from accessing what is in your mind, what is in your heart. So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it did. It did. I mean, that those last two words, aside from capability, is the resources and the access.
Right. And
And
it's
that
up
is,
to those who do have the resources and I
yep.
think this kind of goes back to your earlier question,
Mm-hmm.
to spread the resources.
Yeah. And that is exactly what a young student said. And by way of Aliceville,
Mhm.
17 years old, that wants to be a meteorologist. He's already a volunteer storm chaser or spotter. It's the exposure. It's
Mhm.
sometimes you're in a certain town, in particular, Aliceville is a small town about a population of 2,000. And a lot of us we never kind of remember home. So, with that being said, I hope that throughout this conversation here, I have been a champion for all people and a cheerleader for a lot of students, and I hope I'm still doing that now. So, what does the this is our last question. Da 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 da. If you're listening, y'all go ahead and give us a drum roll. But I mean, she also had a peer that was in, and I'm sure she'll come on this podcast one day, and you might as
Yeah.
well get ready for notes because you're gonna need more ink and paper because these young ladies they've been putting it down a long time. Like, I mean, I'm serious. When I met them, they were on fire and they hadn't lit up. So that's just great to see how people progress. And really, when you're in high school, it's probably who you're going to be anyway. And she's definitely met and exceeded my expectations for the course of this interview. I've learned a lot. Iron sharpens iron, and they continue to do so. So, Miss Afton Taylor, valedictorian, class of 2008, $5.4 million in scholarship, and no one has broken that record since, even with the change of the name of the schools. I challenge you all. Somebody out there listening, go ahead and break that record of just Lanier High Schools. That would have to be Bessemer City High in particular. But Miss Taylor, what does the Forte effect mean to you? What is it?
I would say it is unbridled enthusiasm, just a level of just reckless enthusiasm about life, the day, being present, just truly the epitome of being happy to be here. That's the Forte effect to me.
All right. Well, you heard it from Miss Afftene Taylor by way of Georgia. Duke along. The Forte Effect. Hey, I'm your host, Forte, and it's been great. Make sure that you leave us some feedback, drop some comments. If you got some resources to help our guests out, make sure that you reach out because it is a collective process, and we know that we all can achieve as individuals. Hey, reinvention is not starting over, it's simply moving forward. And this has been the Forte Effect. Thank you so much.